Sarah Cantwell couldn't continue to ignore the unsettling feeling gnawing at her. There was an undeniable tension between her husband and their teenage daughter, and she felt compelled to uncover the truth. Their voices echoed from the kitchen, drawing her closer. Determined to discern the nature of their conversation, Sarah tiptoed down the hall, the sound of their voices intensifying. As she cautiously peered into the kitchen, what she witnessed left her utterly dumbfounded. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Sarah's deepest desire was for her daughter to have a positive father figure in her life. When she initially introduced Kayla to John, she was overjoyed by their strong rapport. However, a few months following their wedding, Sarah began to observe disconcerting changes in the dynamic between her husband and daughter. Suddenly, their relationship took an unexpected turn, leaving Sarah perplexed and unsure of how to interpret it. Initially, when Sarah began to perceive the shift, she dismissed it as mere coincidence. Whenever she entered a room where Kayla and John were present, they would abruptly fall silent, as if concealing something. Initially, Sarah brushed off these occurrences as insignificant. However, her concerns deepened when she chanced upon them whispering to each other in the hallway. It was then that she realized something was amiss. This pattern persisted for weeks, leaving Sarah increasingly suspicious. When she confronted her husband, he dismissed her concerns with a nonchalant shrug, feigning ignorance. Realizing she couldn't rely on her husband to address the issue, Sarah took it upon herself to unravel the truth. The dilemma consumed her thoughts, keeping her awake for nights on end. Yet, after much contemplation, she devised a perfect plan. Sarah understood the potential repercussions of installing hidden cameras. She anticipated her husband and daughter's anger if they uncovered her actions. However, her determination to uncover the truth outweighed her concerns about their reactions. Waiting until she was alone at home, Sarah carefully installed the cameras. Later that evening, as she relaxed in the bath, curiosity overtook her, prompting her to check the footage to see what her husband and daughter were doing. Once comfortably settled in the bathtub, Sarah reached for her phone resting nearby. She had informed her husband and daughter that she would be taking an extended bath, suspecting that they were concealing something, and felt this was the only way to uncover the truth. Opening the app to view the footage, she anxiously awaited the video to load. However, she was unprepared for the shocking revelation that awaited her. Initially, the scene appeared ordinary. John stood in the kitchen, preparing himself a drink, while Kayla entered and inquired about her mother's whereabouts. As Kayla approached, Sarah observed with furrowed brows. Her unease heightened as she witnessed John's response, turning with a smirk to reassure Kayla that they had ample time without Sarah present. His words sent a chill down Sarah's spine as she watched in dismay while her daughter edged nearer. Sarah Cantwell's life had been marked by challenges from the start. Raised in the heart of Detroit, Michigan, she harbored dreams of escaping her surroundings with her own Prince Charming by her side. At 18, she thought she found him in Daniel, but their visions didn't align. While Sarah yearned to leave Michigan behind, Daniel was rooted in the state. Despite their differences, they welcomed their first and only child together. Sarah and Daniel persevered together for a few years, solely for the sake of their daughter. However, when Kayla reached the age of 6, Daniel reached his breaking point. The day he departed marked one of the most challenging periods in Sarah's life. Not only did Daniel sever ties with Sarah, but he also abandoned their daughter. It was during this tumultuous time that Sarah made the decision to relocate to Minnesota with Kayla, determined to forge a new path for their future. Upon settling into their new residence, Sarah wasted no time in securing a remarkable position at a prestigious law firm, diving into her work with fervor. However, it wasn't long before she crossed paths with one of the firm's partners, who instantly captivated her. John, with his striking charm, left Sarah smitten. He was undeniably one of the most attractive men she had ever encountered, and she found herself helplessly infatuated. Despite her admiration, their actions remained scarce. He worked in a different department, but she often saw him in the parking lot and around the coffee stations. She worked at the law firm for years before she finally moved to his department. Over the years, John only seemed to become more attractive with age. But little did Sarah know that he had noticed her too. After Daniel left, Sarah swore she would stay single for the next few years, and she did, but when John asked her out on a date, she couldn't resist. They hit it off right away, and there was no doubt in her mind that John was a good man. When she mentioned her daughter, he seemed curious about Kayla, but most importantly, it wasn't a deal-breaker for him. "I always saw you around the office, but I assumed you had a husband or something," he said, clinking his glass of wine against hers. She blushed, a large grin tugging at the corners of her lips. Each date seemed to go better than the last, and soon she found herself falling for John, but she needed to know what her 14-year-old daughter thought of the man. They went on a few dates before Sarah even considered letting him meet Kayla. She had to be sure that he was someone she could trust. The last thing she wanted was to bring a man home who would leave them once again. It was during their 5th date that Sarah finally decided to bring it up. "So I wanted to know if you'd want to come over to my place this weekend. I can cook, and you can finally meet Kayla," she said, waiting in anticipation for his response. A smile spread across his handsome face. "I would love to meet your daughter." "What can I bring?" he said. It was the best news she'd ever received. From the first time they met, John and Kayla hit it off right away. He cracked jokes, and she told him all about her friends at school. Sarah thought she was the luckiest woman in the world to have the two of them in her life. Just 3 years later, the pair got married. John moved into their home with them, and at first everything seemed perfect. But soon, something changed. When Sarah first started noticing the change, she thought it was some kind of crazy coincidence, but it wasn't. It was just weeks after the wedding when she noticed it. Without fail, each time she walked into a room with Kayla and John, they would fall silent and pretend that nothing was happening. At first, Sarah didn't think this was a big deal. She assumed she was just walking in toward the end of their conversations or something, but one day she witnessed something truly odd. Sarah was in their bedroom when she heard the whispers coming from down the hall. Confused, she decided to peek out of her bedroom door. But that's when she saw something strange. It was Kayla and John. They were standing in the hall, whispering to each other until they noticed Sarah staring. As soon as they spotted her, they went their separate ways. This did not sit right with her. For the entire rest of the day, Sarah couldn't help but feel like something suspicious was going on. Sarah knew that it was up to her to get to the bottom of it, but how would she go about it? It kept her awake for nights on end, but eventually she thought of the perfect plan. When Sarah decided to install the hidden cameras, she knew how angry her husband and daughter would be if they discovered what she had done. But that didn't matter. She waited until she was home alone to install the cameras, and that night, while she was taking a bath, she decided to see what her husband and daughter were up to. Sarah told her husband that she would be in the bath for a while. She knew that her husband and daughter would end up in the kitchen once again, talking while she wasn't around. She watched the footage, and sure enough, her daughter approached John. "Sarah's taking a long bath. We have all the time in the world," John said, and this instantly sent alarm bells off in her head. But then she watched something truly bizarre happen. Sarah noticed the grin on her daughter's face as she slowly walked closer to her stepfather. But what on earth was she doing? What was going on? It was at that moment that she shot up out of the bath and decided to confront them.
Sarah quickly threw a nightgown over her shoulders and rushed to the kitchen, desperate to stop whatever was happening. Sarah couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was going on between her husband and her teenage daughter, and she had to get to the bottom of it. She could hear their voices in the kitchen. This time she was determined to hear what they were talking about. She slowly walked down the hall, their voices becoming louder. But when she looked into the kitchen, she couldn't believe what she saw. Kayla and John were standing close together, his arm around her shoulders as they stared at something on the counter before them. "That's amazing. Good job keeping it a secret from your mother," John said. Sarah couldn't take it any longer. She had to know what it was that they had been hiding from her. She decided to speak up. "Hide what from me?" The second her voice boomed through the kitchen, Kayla grabbed the piece of paper from in front of her and hid it behind her back, her cheeks red with embarrassment. When John was caught off guard. "Honey, what are you doing out of the bath?" he chuckled nervously. But it was too late. He had been found out and she wanted the answers immediately. "I decided to cut it short. Now tell me what you two have been hiding from me." They could tell from the look on her face that she was upset. Kayla stared at her mother in confusion. "I think we should tell her she told her stepfather." John sighed and looked between his wife and his stepdaughter. But eventually he nodded, agreeing with Kayla. Kayla slowly brought the piece of paper out from behind her and handed it to her mother, but Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. It was a handmade card for her birthday, which was right around the corner. "We have been arranging something special for the day. I booked the two of you a spa date for the afternoon. In the morning we were thinking about going to the zoo," John said. Tears welled up behind Sarah's eyes as she stepped forward and pulled Kayla and John into her arms for a big hug. She couldn't believe that all along. They were arranging something special for her. She spent that evening with her family, relieved to be with such an amazing man and to have a wonderful daughter. She knew that they would never hurt her,